First of all, thanks, Harold, and thank you, Kathy, and the board of directors. Can everybody hear us okay? I would say choose the two things that have changed the most. The first of which is on the internal side, the quality systems that we've put in based upon food safety requirements, which have made us, I think, at the lead in the industry, and probably, we were not as sophisticated. We were. The squirrels. We were, and I think we got into these quality programs based upon requests from certain customers, and it's made us so much better. As I look back and I see, walk through our facility or see some of the programs that we have, it's brought us to, an even or better playing field than some of our competitors. And I think that plays on the marketing side. If you visit our website, I feel like somebody's tapping here. You see that EFCO is a leading supplier of these ingredients, which is true. I believe we are. We're talking to the top, restaurant chains, both nationally and internationally. But EFCO's revenues are 1/50th the size of our largest competitor in the United States. So you have to understand that we are very much a niche player, and that in order to find success, we've got to partner with the right customers and be responsive to their needs, and I think we've become better at that. And as I look at where our opportunities lie now, it's much more with the specialization than it was, say, 15 years ago, which puts more of an onus on us, but actually provides us with more opportunity.
That's very interesting, and the word niche came up a lot, and that is something we hear a lot from Hudson Valley manufacturers, that they found a niche that they are able to, because I think it's fair to say that being in New York State, the Hudson Valley, the United States, the cost side of the equation for manufacturing is on the high side of the spectrum. So it is important to note that high value-added, high technology products are going to be an advantage for our companies, because they are not easily transformed and shipped overseas where labor is cheaper and environmental regulations and safety regulations are a little bit more lax. So you mentioned that you have some business abroad. Any other panelists working with exporting? Jim, AVI? Sure.
We realized our market is very niche too.
Jim, you may want to just explain the product too. It's a little complicated.
All right. We design and build wax injection equipment for the investment casting industry. Investment casting is the most economical way to mass produce integral metal parts, stuff that can't be stamped out of sheet of metal or be too expensive to go into a machine shop. So say you wanted to make a valve. You would go to a tool and die maker, and simply he would take a block of metal, cut it in half, and machine out the negative of the part you want to make. Then you would take your die to an investment casting foundry. There's only 3 in New York State. Hopefully they have an MPI wax injector. It's a big press. They open it up, you slide your die in, you clamp it shut, and you inject the die with wax. When you open up the die, you got a perfect replica of what you want to make, but in wax. Right? Then we're out of the process. Then it goes into the porcelain room, where it's dipped with liquid porcelain, hit with fine sand, dip dry until there's a nice shell around that wax. Then they melt the wax out, pour your molten metal into that hollow cavity, then once it's hard, break the shell off and you have your metal part. That's investment casting.
Got it? No test later.
Right. So,
no pictures. It's hard to do.
So in the 80s,
imagine just a jet turbines, propellers for submarines.
One of the fastest growing markets right now is human implants. As we get older, we need that knee replaced, we need a hip joint replaced. That's all made through investment casting. So Bruce Phipps, the owner and founder, realized in the 80s that the U.S. market was too small to support us. So he went out and established sales agents throughout the world. Last year, we exported 65% of our product. We've had years where it's been over 80. So the international market is very important to us. One portion may be hot, another one's cold. One of the growing markets for us is China. So instead of importing from China, we export to China. We have our machines in 38 countries, and that's where our growth is. We've identified Brazil and India, and that's where we're concentrated on for the last 2 years.
So my follow-up question to you is, it's a complicated and high-tech piece of equipment that you make. What kind of workers do you have employed, and what kind of a ballpark range of wages, salaries that they're making? Don't want you to incriminate any individual person.
One of our typical employees on the floor would probably earn around $40,000 a year, all the way up to $100,000 for our mechanical engineers. So we're providing livable wages for our people, and that's one thing we've always made. One of our goals is never to lose an employee because we're underpaid.
So as I said, this is my economics lesson that I like to convey to people about manufacturing is that 65% of their sales are from overseas. We're talking about a lot of capital being brought back into Poughkeepsie and being spent throughout the community. So you can see the statistics that Kathy mentioned earlier about the multiplier effect. We're seeing a lot of cash. It's not just being recirculated, but it's new capital coming into the region. Donna, we left you off. I know you do a lot of exporting. Yours is probably the newest company with a very interesting, complicated technology, but an innovation homegrown. You want to talk a little bit about the birth of solid state cooling?
Sure. I mean, we're not that new. We started 18 years ago, so.
That's baby.
Yeah, so 18 years ago, so things have changed a lot. Those first years were the most difficult, I'd say, the most challenging, just trying to develop new products and get out into the market with very little cash was a challenge, and you learn quickly to solve your customers' problems as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Can you guys hear, Kat? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So switch microphones. I think that's the bad microphone.
We working here?
Is that better?
So you missed my joke about it. I thought 18 years old was really not all that young, but.
Just Jafco products as well.
Yeah, yeah. I'd say the early years were our most challenging, with different challenges of just trying to make it through with very little cash. Developing the new products and developing marketplaces was challenging at that point. It took a long time to get the first $1 million sales year. But now, 18 years later, we're off 8 consecutive years of growth, besides a little downturn in 2009. So as far as international sales, about 30% of our sales now are international, and the other 7% domestic sales are really not regional. Most of our sales are from outside the region, so we do our manufacturing all here. So.
And the product, the technology, the product?
Technology, we make temperature control equipment and chillers, which are really pretty unglamorous, but if you have a large piece of equipment you need and needs to have that process to run at a certain temperature, we'll provide the equipment to control the temperature of that process so that your process works correctly. So it's just sort of a support type of product generally.
And just kind of a segue, what challenges are you facing? I mean, as a young company, you probably needed capital and cash, and was maybe difficult to find.
Yeah.
Now is that still an issue, or is that something that has solved itself?
No, that's a good question. In the early years, that was very important. Cash was really important. We are a private company, a C corporation, so we have a group of investors that funded us in the early years.
You have to really be deliberate.
Oh, really? Okay. I said in the early years, the cash was, of course, a big issue. We do have a nice group of investors who've been very supportive in the early years, but now we're self-supporting and have been for a while. I'd say our key challenge now is really just costs just increase every year, especially parts and labor, and especially benefits. We work very closely with our suppliers, try to forge close relationships that helps with cost and quality. And another key cost would be benefits, such as health insurance has really increased a lot. We've had about, on average, a 20% increase in health insurance costs every year for the past few years. So that's a challenge. But, we're very committed to New York State. We love living here, so we're, working on those solutions. We work every day to control costs and keep profitable.
Are those, the other panelists, are those similar challenges, the cost side of the equation?
I would definitely say so, Harold. We've experienced, significant inflation in the food industry, and what we're seeing, and this is not atypical. And the great thing is, I have my dad and Jack and Ira, Andy Herzing here, who've been through periods like this, where you have margin compression based upon inflationary input costs, combined with larger competitors trying to hold on to market share. And we have seen significant resistance on the consumer level to price changes. So the consumer has said enough. And really, it was incredibly clear to me that the consumer came back was not there last year, came back from October 15th to February 15th. And as soon as that gas price went up, the consumer just didn't have the money in their pocket. And I think that's something we have to be cognizant of. I'll weave back to a minute to the international side, and I think the key for all of us seems to be revenue growth. And I've spent 3 weeks in Asia in 2012, and I can tell you this, that Asia is moving, and moving in a good way. And I'm very excited about that. But we as American manufacturers have to be better. We've got to differentiate ourselves, and that puts the onus upon entrepreneurs, on business leaders like us to make that investment. But it also puts the onus on every associate to become better, so that we're not going to be able, if we want to say buy American, nobody cares that there's an American flag on there. Let's be honest. We've got to make, and I'd say that there is a support for American quality, but we've got to back that up. Nobody's going to do that for us. And when I'm in Seoul, South Korea, and I see the sophistication in education, in mathematics, in science, in computer science, see the same thing in Dubai, there are wonderful opportunities for us as Americans, but we better be ready for the speed. We better be ready for that speed. I'm excited about it. It actually puts onus upon us, but also from a government level, and I very much support the words of County Executive Molinaro and others. The government has to be supportive of economic growth, and I think we can. I'm very much an optimist as an American, but we've got to do the work. It's not coming to us without that real strong work and the ability. And I look at my team here, even for the and these aren't the elders, by the way. The elders is my 105-year-old grandmother, who I have to report back to later. They have, and she'd have a critique, by the way, on the jam. But I think the point that I'm making is we all must change, and I actually think it's exciting. But when you stay on the street, and it's funny, I was in Seoul, South Korea, and the customers are like, "You smile a lot." I'm like, "There's a donut shop on every corner. This is great." So,
Jim, you want to chime in on that? Anything to add?
No, MPI is always heavily invested in R&D, and that's what keeps us at the front of the technology, #1 in the field of wax ingestion equipment. It's been painful at times, and fortunately we found a very supporting bank in Riverside that believed in us and helped us grow. And right now, instead of me not sleeping at night trying to figure out where cash flow is coming from, it's finally starting to come in very smoothly. That's one of the biggest factors you have to watch as you grow is your cash flow. And we're dealing with customers like Rolls-Royce, who their payment terms, since they are Rolls-Royce, are net 75 days. So
that would be difficult.
That takes some planning.
It's interesting. I know it is great to hear from the county executive, and I know government and economic development organizations throughout the valley are working together. I'll just give a quick kind of update on something that the Council of Industry is involved in. We're a private, not-for-profit. We're 100 years old too. AFCO is one of our original members. But we're working with a few other organizations. Those of you in the economic development world in New York State recognize that there's an alphabet soup of organizations. And many of them are very supportive organizations. Kathy mentioned community colleges and BOCES for the skilled workers. There's college at four-year schools doing business programs, there's engineering schools. We're working with a few organizations, Solar Energy Consortium, I think Carl Meyer's here somewhere, Carl? Wave, Carl's here. As well as Hudson Valley Technology Development Center, the IDAs, Hudson Valley Focus, Tom Sipos' group, to bring together all these organizations in a more coordinated effort, something called the Center for Global Advanced Manufacturing. So we're hoping that that's going to come together so we can help support companies like this, which have more complicated, more sophisticated needs than your typical Main Street business may have. My plug. So looking forward, where are each of your companies going to be in 5 years? Let's start with you, Jim. 5 years from now, what's the plan?
The plan is one of our new revenue streams is selling complete wax assemblies to foundries so it can go right into the shelling room. And the hub of the investment casting industry is in Cleveland. So 5 years, we foresee having a production facility in Cleveland, selling wax assemblies to the other foundries in that area. Also, we're developing a joint venture in China to manufacture a middle-level wax injection equipment. We foresee at that time selling 50 to 60 units, but the way we're controlling that is we'll be creating jobs over on Smith Street because all the sub-assemblies will be manufactured here in Poughkeepsie, shipped over to China where they're just assembled. So we keep control of the PLC of the machines, the logic of the machines.
Gets technical fast. Done.
5 years from now, we'd definitely like to continue our just profitable, gradual growth. That would be the key. Now, as far as specifics, we'll have to kind of look at the markets as we go along. But if I had that crystal ball, I'd say we'll be heading a little more towards medical and biotech-related products and engineering solutions for our customers.
Interesting.
I think to mirror the other panelists, I think for us the focus will be on continued innovation and the expansion into different areas, in particular ice cream ingredients, adding from the traditional bakery line, but trying to digest those opportunities, but also not get too far astray from our core. Remaining who we are, and actually, and maybe on a dissimilar note to others, is as some of our competitors have developed a distaste for core product line, we feel that there is opportunity, especially internationally, with not getting too far away from our core, and understanding that when we do take on new opportunities, that they have to be in line with what our core strategies are, because we are that niche player that I described earlier.
Thank you. Kathy tells me we have time for just 2 or 3 questions, so I'm going to turn the mic over to.
Thanks. If there's any questions from the audience, Matt?
When Jim mentioned that his financing was from Riverside Bank, and Efron, Steve, and Efron is on the panel, I just wanted to point out that Efrons were involved in the formation of that bank.
Not me.
On a personal level, not the company. And it's that kind of local entrepreneurial spirit and raising of capital and marshaling capital resources that can really drive local growth. I just wanted to say thank you to Efron and thank you to you all. It was more of a comment than a question.
That's great. Thanks, Matt. Anyone else? County Executive, former County Executive Steinhaus, thank you. Welcome.
Good morning. Could you just comment quickly what you think the farm system or feeder system will or won't be in terms of the skill sets for workforce development for you to be successful, or for you to struggle to try to be successful in terms of where those skills will come from?
Okay. I think that, and let's take it on, and I think we are probably a little different than the other two in that we still have, significant for lack of a better term, factory work. So, but that factory work is becoming more sophisticated. So it was 10, 15 years ago that somebody would push a button and the jelly would come out of the pipe and they'd see the scale and it's 45 pounds. Now that machine operator may have to operate a PLC panel. They may have to do some basic mathematics to convert a calendar, to convert from a traditional calendar to a Julian calendar. So those are the type of things, I think, in terms of the technological skills. We're not talking, and we do have, food scientists on team, but we're not talking about development of engineering, but for that factory floor level associate, there is going to have to be more sophistication to the people that we bring in, both in terms of the manufacturing makeup part as well as the packaging portion, for them to be able to have the necessary skill sets to meet our needs.
That's great. Tom?
Tom Sibus. Harold, we had the manufacturing focus group back in November with 6 of our area manufacturers. I'd like you to talk about the not only the skill sets, but the age of your existing workforce and the need to convey this message that we do have manufacturing in this valley and there is a future and there are careers, because we identified just a tremendous need from just those 6 people around the table.
Sure, sorry, Ken. It's interesting the history here, but many machine shops grew up in the Hudson Valley around IBM's growth, and they remain. They've diversified. They've got lots of opportunities, but they just because of don't need to get into all the details. But the bottom line is, as Tom says, the average age of a machinist, or actually a real experienced tool maker, is almost 60 years old. And they really deserve to retire at some point, but we can't allow that to happen. And actually, the average age is over 40. So there's very few people stepping up into these positions, and it's interesting. Really, there's been a tremendous recognition, not as much as needs to be, but amongst the community colleges, particularly here at Dutchess. I can't say enough about the people here at Dutchess Community College, perhaps the most responsive of all the colleges. To integrate and their existing programs with the current needs of manufacturers. So there are some things changing, but as Tom says, it's really important for policymakers at all levels to be aware of the skill shortage, because if these companies are going to continue to be successful and grow here rather than in Cleveland, we need to have the people here to fill their needs. I mean, and honestly, a company in Orange County just made the announcement. They're expanding their operation. They have an operation in Virginia. They're expanding it in Virginia, and the reason they're doing that is because they can't get people to work here. It's just the people are there. There's an academy. They graduate the students. They go right to work. So that's it.
Well, I think we're going to end our questions there and just use that as a word of encouragement for all of you to encourage your children, your nieces, your nephews, your neighbors, to consider manufacturing as a career, because there are opportunities. There's good opportunities available, and like I said, it has an impact on us, our families, and our communities. So I want to thank our panel this morning for being here. Harold, Steve, Donna, and Jim, thank you for coming.